There are moments in life when you start to wonder if God is doing something behind the scenes, something deeper than what you can see or feel. You've prayed, you've hoped, you've waited, but still nothing seems to be happening. And yet that silence might not be absence. It might be preparation. Before God brings the right person into your life, He often begins with you. Not with your future partner, not with the timing, not with the circumstances. He begins with you. It can feel frustrating, even lonely at times, because we often expect love to be something that just appears when the time is right. But God is far more intentional. He prepares your heart, your character, and your perspective long before the person you've been praying for ever enters the picture. This preparation often comes in the form of pruning. God starts removing things that are not meant to grow with you: habits, relationships, mindsets, and even emotional patterns. You might find yourself going through situations that expose your impatience, challenge your insecurities, or push you to confront deep wounds you've carried for years. That's not punishment. That's love. God is not interested in simply giving you a relationship that looks good on the outside, but is broken at the core. He wants to make sure your foundation is strong enough to handle the weight of the love He's building in your future. It's easy to say we're ready for love, but readiness isn't about desire, it's about capacity. Do you have the emotional maturity to love sacrificially, to forgive quickly, to communicate honestly, to stay when things get hard? Those things aren't built in the presence of another person. They're cultivated in seasons when you feel like no one is coming. But God is. He's coming to meet you in the quiet places. He's coming to reshape the way you see yourself, the way you trust Him, and the way you love others. Sometimes God will strip away the distractions so that you can finally hear Him clearly. He'll close doors that seem promising, not to disappoint you, but to redirect you. He will ask you to surrender your timeline, your expectations, and even your definition of what the right person looks like. Because what you think you want and what you actually need are often very different things. God sees who you're becoming and aligns your future partner, not just with your present, but with your purpose. You might feel like you're in a season of silence, but God is speaking through the work He's doing in your heart. He's not ignoring your prayers. He's answering them by making sure you're ready to receive what you're asking for. That kind of love requires a prepared heart, a steady spirit, and a deep trust in the one who writes your story. So if you find yourself being stretched, refined, or even made to wait, know this: God is not delaying, He's developing. And before He gives you the right person, He's committed to helping you become the right person too. Because real love is not found by chance. It's formed by God, one healed heart at a time. There comes a moment in your journey where the ache of wanting someone shifts into the peace of wanting God more. It's not that the desire for companionship disappears, it's that it no longer controls you. You begin to realize that singleness isn't a punishment. It's not a waiting room. It's a season filled with purpose. And when God is preparing you for the right person, one of the clearest signs is this: you start to find contentment where you are, not just where you hope to be. Contentment in singleness doesn't mean you've given up on love. It means your definition of fulfillment has expanded beyond a relationship. You start to discover that your joy isn't anchored in another person showing up. It's rooted in the presence of God already being with you. That shift is powerful. It's where peace replaces pressure. You no longer feel the need to chase someone or prove your worth to be chosen. You already know you're loved, and that changes everything. In this place of contentment, your heart becomes quiet enough to hear God more clearly. You're not constantly scanning the room, the feed, or your future for signs of a potential partner. You're learning to enjoy your own company, to sit in stillness without fear, and to walk closely with God in the present moment. You begin to see your life not as incomplete, but as rich and full in its own right. There's space for new friendships, bold decisions, deeper healing, and spiritual growth that isn't distracted by the fear of being alone. When contentment takes root, your perspective changes. What once felt like delay now feels like design. You trust that God knows what He's doing, even when it's not happening on your timeline. You don't need to rush or manipulate outcomes. You don't have to lower your standards or hold on to people who don't align with your values. You're no longer making decisions out of desperation. You're moving from a place of peace. And something beautiful happens in that peace. You start to see your own value more clearly. You realize you don't need someone to complete you because you were never incomplete to begin with. You were always whole in Christ. That awareness frees you from clinging to relationships that don't reflect God's best. It gives you discernment to wait for someone who honors the calling on your life, not just someone who fills a void. God often teaches us the most about love in seasons of singleness. It's where we learn to be grateful without having everything figured out, where we learn to love others without needing something in return, where we learn to rest, to dream, and to believe again, not just in finding someone, but in becoming someone worth finding. And that kind of contentment isn't weak. It's a sign of deep spiritual maturity. It's God saying, you're starting to see yourself the way I see you. And when that happens, you know you're not just waiting, you're growing. One of the clearest signs that God is preparing you for the right person is that you're drawn closer to Him, not further away. Your desire for love begins to align with your desire for God, and that changes everything. You no longer see a relationship as your ultimate fulfillment. It becomes a reflection of something deeper, something holy. God starts becoming your first pursuit, not a side thought or backup plan. And that intimacy shapes how you love, how you wait, and how you discern. In this season, you may notice your priorities shifting. What used to matter, status, looks, compatibility on paper, now seems secondary to whether someone walks with God. You become more sensitive to His voice. You find yourself reading Scripture not just to check a box, but because it gives you clarity. You pray not just for a future spouse, but for the strength to become the person He's calling you to be. Your relationship with God becomes more than a hope for a good outcome. It becomes the source of your peace, your identity, your direction. This closeness to God also brings you wisdom. Not every door that opens is from Him, and the deeper your relationship with God, the quicker you can discern when something or someone is not for you. God isn't just preparing your heart to receive the right person. He's preparing your spirit to recognize what's right and what's counterfeit. When your heart is grounded in Him, you won't settle for less just because you're lonely or tired of waiting. You begin to recognize that peace isn't found in a person, it's found in obedience. And obedience doesn't always feel easy. Sometimes God will ask you to walk away from something that looks good on the outside but isn't rooted in Him. That's the tension of preparation. It's not always about gain. Sometimes it's about surrender. But even in the letting go, you find God holding you closer. You see that He's not trying to take love from you. He's trying to teach you what love really is. He's not keeping something good from you. He's building something unshakable within you. In that closeness, your standards are no longer shaped by the world's timeline or social pressure. They're shaped by your trust in God's plan. You begin to understand that the right person won't pull you away from God. They'll push you deeper into your faith. They won't distract you from your calling. They'll complement it. And until that person comes, you're not stuck, you're being shaped. So when you feel your hunger for God increasing, when your heart longs for His presence, more than approval, more than attention, more than temporary affection, that's not a coincidence. That's preparation. God is drawing you in so that your foundation is strong, your discernment is sharp, and your love is rooted in something eternal. Because when you're close to Him, you're never really waiting alone. You're walking with the one who knows exactly what you need and exactly when to give it. And God is preparing you for the right person. One of the most significant shifts that takes place is the quiet, sometimes painful redefinition of your standards. You begin to see that many of the things you once chased in relationships were shaped by culture, not Christ. What you used to think mattered, popularity, status, surface-level chemistry, starts to lose its grip on your heart. And in its place, God begins to establish a new foundation based on His truth, not the world's trends. This redefinition is subtle at first. Maybe you find yourself no longer entertained by the same romantic ideals that once captivated you. The picture-perfect couple on social media doesn't move you the same way. The curated highlight reels no longer convince you that a relationship is successful just because it looks good on the outside. You begin to ask deeper questions. Does this person reflect Christ in their character? Do they pursue peace or chaos? Do they inspire you to be more like Jesus or distract you from Him? God's truth starts to anchor your expectations. You realize that attraction without alignment is a setup for heartbreak. That good vibes without godly values can only take a relationship so far. You stop romanticizing potential and start recognizing patterns. And those patterns matter because God doesn't just want you to be with someone who makes you feel good in the moment. He wants you to partner with someone who's willing to grow, serve, and love like Christ does. This process can be uncomfortable. You might find yourself outgrowing past versions of yourself, mindsets that accepted less, relationships that lacked depth, connections that felt exciting but weren't built on anything lasting. God isn't being harsh by removing those things. He's being protective. He's making space for something sacred. He's teaching you that love isn't just about chemistry. It's about character, commitment, and calling. And in that, your heart becomes less reactive and more discerning. You're no longer swayed by flattery or charisma. You start noticing integrity, humility, and a heart for God. You begin to see that the right person isn't necessarily the one who checks every box on your list, but the one whose life is aligned with what God has spoken over yours. This doesn't mean you stop desiring romance or connection. It means you're learning to desire it the right way, a way that's rooted in truth, a way that honors your worth, a way that doesn't settle for shallow love when God has called you to something real. The world might call it picky. God calls it prepared. So if your standards are shifting, if what once impressed you now leaves you unmoved, if you're seeing love through a different lens that's not you being hard to please, that's God reshaping your vision. He's not just changing what you want. He's transforming what you believe you deserve so that when the right person comes, you'll recognize them not by how they fit into your fantasy, but by how they reflect God's truth. When God is preparing you for the right person, He doesn't just ask you to wait, He calls you to grow. This season isn't about standing still or putting life on pause until someone shows up. It's about becoming. It's about letting God shape you into someone who doesn't just desire love, but is ready to live it out in a way that honors Him. The right relationship isn't just about finding the right person. It's about becoming the kind of person who can carry the weight of real love with grace, maturity, and purpose. Waiting without growth leads to frustration. But when waiting is paired with intentional growth, it becomes preparation. God is not interested in you passively counting days. He's interested in who you're becoming during the in-between. Are you learning how to communicate with patience and clarity? Are you learning to manage conflict with humility instead of pride? Are you learning how to put others first, even when it's uncomfortable? These aren't just good relationship skills, they're marks of spiritual maturity, and they're developed long before love arrives. Growth also means facing the things that could sabotage your future if left unchecked. Maybe it's insecurity, fear of abandonment, emotional unavailability, or a tendency to chase validation. God doesn't expose those things to shame you. He brings them to the surface so you can heal. Because He's not preparing you for a fairy tale. He's preparing you for a partnership, and that requires honesty with yourself first. If you avoid the hard work of growth now, you'll carry unresolved pain into what was meant to be a healthy future. At the same time, this season is an opportunity to invest in your calling. What dreams has God placed on your heart? What areas of your life have been waiting for your full attention? This is the time to step into those things. Start the ministry, take the class, heal the relationship with yourself. When you pursue growth with God at the center, you start building a life that's full, not one that's dependent on someone else completing it. And that kind of life attracts the right person, not because you need them, but because you're already whole and walking in purpose. Growing while you wait also deepens your trust in God. It teaches you to rely on His timing, not your own. It keeps you from settling for a relationship just because you're tired of being alone. And most importantly, it reminds you that love isn't just something you receive, it's something you give, something you live out, something you carry with responsibility. That kind of love can't be rushed into. It has to be grown into. So if it feels like nothing is happening, don't assume God is silent. He may be inviting you into a deeper season of growth, one that prepares you not only for the person you're waiting for, but for the life you're called to live. Because in God's plan, preparation isn't passive, it's powerful. When God is preparing you for the right person, delays are rarely just delays, they're divine. What looks like a detour is often a deliberate act of protection or positioning. We live in a culture that treats waiting as a waste, where if something doesn't happen quickly, it's assumed to be broken or wrong. But God doesn't move at the speed of our expectations. He moves at the pace of His purpose. And when He delays something, it's not to punish you, it's to prepare you for what's ahead and align you with what's meant to last. Divine delays expose what can't go with you into your future. Maybe it's an unhealthy attachment, a toxic mindset, or a relationship that feels good but isn't built on God. Sometimes we cling to something that feels right emotionally, but is misaligned spiritually. And so God, in His mercy, slows everything down. Not because He's cruel, but because He sees the long-term consequences we can't. What feels like rejection is often God's redirection. What feels like silence is often Him clearing the path. In the delay, things that were once unclear become sharp. You start to see why certain doors didn't open and why certain people couldn't stay. You realize that if God had given you what you prayed for when you prayed for it, it would have come at the cost of your peace or your purpose. Divine delays give space for growth. They give time for healing. They allow both you and the person you're praying for to be refined and made ready in ways you couldn't force on your own. The delay is where God often does His deepest work. It's where your trust is tested and your faith is stretched. It's where you learn to surrender your timeline and stop treating God like a delivery service. You stop asking, when will it happen, and start asking, who am I becoming while I wait? That shift changes everything. It's where your waiting becomes worship, where your pain becomes prayer, and where your perspective begins to align with God's, not your own desires. Eventually, alignment happens not just between you and another person, but between your heart and God's heart. Suddenly, you see that the timing wasn't off, it was perfect. You see how things that once didn't make sense now connect. The right person appears not as a surprise, but as the result of God's preparation. And you're ready not just to receive them, but to walk in relationship with purpose and maturity. So if it feels like God is delaying your prayers being answered, take heart. He may be aligning more than you know. He's not just putting things together for your good. He's lining them up in such a way that they reflect His glory. Because when it's God's timing, you won't have to force it, rush it, or fear losing it. Divine delays lead to divine alignments. And when God brings it together, it will be worth every moment you waited in faith. So if you find yourself in a season of waiting, wondering when or if the right person will come, remember this: God is not idle. He is intentional. Every moment of silence, every closed door, every shift in your heart is part of a greater preparation. He is working in the unseen, shaping your character, healing your wounds, refining your standards, and drawing you closer to Him. This isn't just about finding love. It's about being made ready to carry love well. The right person isn't just a promise to be fulfilled, but a partnership to be stewarded. And when God brings two prepared hearts together, it won't be rushed, forced, or confusing. It will be clear, purposeful, and rooted in something far deeper than emotion. So lean into the process. Let God work on you, grow you, align you. Because when the right person arrives, you'll see that the wait wasn't a delay, it was divine preparation for something truly worth the journey.